everyone, this is a review of our first string lesson. It was awesome to see all of our new string players last week for our lesson. I know some people were out and we will get them caught up next week, and hopefully this video will kind of help give you a head start to some of the things you missed. So this is a review for all instruments, so remember that there are some things specific to each instrument that we've gone over in class. They also are written in the lesson book, and I'm going to show you where to find those so you can help your child out if you have some specific questions about their instrument. But this is just a general overview of some of the things we went through in their lesson and some ways that you can help them with practicing their homework before their next lesson. So just some general instrument care that we talked about. We worked on taking the instruments out and putting them back in to the case properly. Violins and violas, some of them have a little seatbelt Velcro strip that goes around the neck. Others don't, but the big thing is just making sure that the case is latched and zipped up. Cellos and basses, they're a little bit harder to get into their case, but we talked about the best way is to take the case and put it over the scroll first and then kind of work it around the instrument, and making sure that when you take the case off the instrument, the bow is just hanging out in the case, that you put the case in a spot where you're not going to step on it and step on the bow. And speaking of the bow, you'll notice the homework this week did not include using the bow, right? The stick that's in the case, the stick with hair. We will learn how to do that in a couple of weeks, and I've asked students to promise that they are not going to touch the bow during the next few weeks until we learn how to use it in class. I've actually had kids who unintentionally broke their bow because they thought they knew how to use it and didn't. I promise, as the students work really, really hard and learn some of the things over the next couple weeks, we will get to using the bow in class. So I know it takes a little bit of patience, but that's the way we've always done it, and it works really well for our students. So the other thing is to watch out for these tuning pegs up here. This is true for every instrument except the bass, that if you turn these too far, the string will break. And strings are not cheap, and so we try to reduce string breakage as much as possible. If your child opens their case and the strings are totally loose and not playable, then send me an email and we can work out a time for me to go over and tune them up, or we can do it at their next lesson and get them tuned up and have them ready to go. But please don't touch these pegs. Again, I've had students unintentionally break a string or break more than one string because they thought they could turn the pegs and tune it. So every student received a lesson book. The cover looks like this. This is the teacher manual, so it's a little thicker, but every student received a lesson book that looks like that. And they had two pieces of homework for next time. So the first piece of homework was on page 3. And again, depending on what instrument you have, page 3 will look a little bit different. Page 3 talks about some steps for holding your instrument. And we went over those in class. Again, that particular thing is completely different across instruments, so I'm not going to review that right now. But one thing that is common for everyone is that every instrument has 4 strings. And we talked about that part of the homework is going to be naming the strings next time they come back to class. So you can see the way that they've indicated it in the book. They actually show the thickness of the string. So here's my violin, just so everyone can see for an example. You can see that this top string is much thicker than the bottom string. And so when they're naming strings, you're going to look for which one is the thickest and then kind of work from there. That's the best way to make sure you're naming the strings the proper way and not backwards. Okay. We also worked on, once you have your instrument in the proper playing position, depending on what instrument you're playing, that you're going to make with your right hand an L. You're going to put your thumb against this black part called the fingerboard, not on the edge right here, but just against the side. And if you're a cello or bass, it looks like this. Okay, it's a little higher up. Okay, you pluck this way for cello and bass. Violins and violas pluck this way. And we practice having that thumb anchored, wiggling your index finger, and then going through and plucking every string. And that's the fancy word for that is pizzicato. We might call it plucking, but being able to go through and, depending on your instrument, saying what each string name is. So that will be part of the homework for next week. I'm going to ask each student, tell me what your string names are, and I expect them to be able to do that. Some of them actually could do it before they left their last lesson, which was awesome. And then we took a look at page 4. And hopefully your students came home and were really excited to share with you that they learned 4 tunes in their lesson, 4 songs that they could play together as a group, which was really exciting. And these 4 tunes use the notes D and A. So every instrument that we have in our string group, violin, viola, cello, and bass, have a D string and an A string. They are in different places depending on what instrument you're playing, but they all have a D string and an A string. And so if you take a look at number 2 is called Let's Play Open D, and number 2 just uses the D string. And so your child could find where is D on their instrument, and that's the note that they're going to play for all of number 2. So what I'm going to do for the rest of this video is actually go through numbers 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you can have your instrument out, you can be playing along with me as I play these to kind of help give you a little bit of an extra help in learning numbers 2 through 5, which were the homework. So the first thing I like to do is go through and read the notes. You can see for Let's Play Open D, there's quarter note Ds, and then there are also some quarter note rests. That's a note that looks like this. And when you have a rest in music, it means you don't do anything. You stop for one beat. And so you can see, like in the first measure, we have 3 Ds and then a rest. So we wouldn't do anything on the rest. And so the other thing that we pointed out in our lesson is that the notes for right now have the letter names written in them. If you flip towards the back of the book, the notes do not have the letter names written in them. And so the beginning of this book is very nice to beginners, but we want to make sure that we're starting to learn how to read the notes. And we went over that in our lesson too, because it is different depending on what instrument you play. So let's go through and read number 2. We'll either say D or rest, and then we'll play it. So here we go. D, 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 rest. D, 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 rest. D, 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 rest. And so now we're going to play it. And one thing that I noticed that all of our students did very well, that is a tough thing to do as a beginner. They really kept their eyeballs on the music while they were playing. Sometimes it's tempting to look up at the teacher or to look up somewhere else or look at your hand the whole time, but you need to be looking at the music because the music is telling us what to play. So we're going to get our instrument set, make sure that our body is facing the music, that our eyes are on the music for Let's Play Open D, get our right hand in pizzicato position, have our thumb anchored, and then our index finger right on the D string, whichever string that is for your instrument, and we're going to play it together. So 1, 2, here we go. Rest. 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 So that's playing Let's Play Open D. If you look down at the next one, number 3, Let's Play Open A, you'll see it looks very similar. It's actually identical, except for the fact that instead of D, you're going to play A. And so now we can look and identify on your instrument where the A string is. For everything except the bass, it's the next highest string to D, right? So it's the neighbor to D. For the bass, it's the next lowest string. It's still the neighbor, but you have to go down a string. And so we don't even need to read the notes because it's so similar to Let's Play Open D. So let's play number 3 together. Now you're gonna have to make sure you know where that A string is. So make sure your index finger is on the A string. And ready, and here we go. Rest. 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 Okay, so that's playing, that was our bell, and our bell also is an A, so I guess it just played A. So now if we go to 4, instead of now playing Open D or playing Open A, now you're playing Open D and Open A. And so this is where it can get tricky, and the thing that we did in our lesson is we got in playing position and we practiced putting our finger on D and then putting our finger on A. Again, whichever instrument you are, it could feel a little different. But that way you know, where's my finger going to be for D and where is it going to be for A. And again, really important that that thumb is anchored. If your thumb is just hanging out and your hand's just like this, it's a lot harder to find your spot than if it's anchored and you can really feel where you are playing. So let's go through, since there are different notes in number 4, let's go through and read the notes before we play them. So 1, 2, here we go. D, 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 rest. A, rest. D, D, A, D, 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 rest. Let's play number 4. We're going to get our instrument in playing position, eyes on the music, plucking or pizzicato ready, and index finger on the D string because that's where we start. 1, 2, here we go. Rest, over to A, back to D, rest. Awesome. And then last but not least, number 5. This one is probably the most challenging because you're going back and forth between D and A much more frequently. What I'm going to do is have you pause the video. If you're playing along with me, pause the video and practice saying the note names on your own. So right now, pause, and then we'll come back and play it together. All right, so hopefully it wasn't too difficult going through saying D, A, or rest, and you kind of got an idea of which notes are in each measure and how you're going to be switching back and forth. Luckily, this one again starts on D. We tend to start on D for the first couple of weeks, which is good. It kind of grounds you to know where you're starting. We're going to have our instrument up like this, eyeballs on the music, pizzicato, plucking, ready to go, and index finger on D. And here's number 5. I'm going to go a smidge slower because this one is more challenging. 1, 2, here we go. D, 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 A, D, rest, A, rest, D, D, A, D, A, D, rest. Awesome. So again, there's our bell again, right on time. This is something I told the students is that this is something that you won't just naturally be able to do if you just show up to lessons and only play your instrument on lesson days. You're going to very quickly fall behind. So it's important that at home we get a regular practice routine going, maybe 3 to 4 days a week. This shouldn't take more than 10 minutes to do. As we get into some more challenging things, it could take maybe 15 or 20 minutes. But again, 3 to 4 days a week for 20 minutes isn't too bad of a commitment to make for something that is really, really fun. And I loved seeing all the kids enjoying playing together. It was awesome. And I'm looking forward to doing it again next week. So remember, the homework, saying your string names and playing numbers 2 through 5. And we will do that in class as our warm-up and then move on to something else. All right, so have a great week. Happy practicing, and we'll see you at your next lesson.